Well, I'm on the farm today and thought I'd talk about a subject that's kind of near and dear to me and might be of some help to if you're starting a hay farm, or you just starting a small farm, or maybe you just in the middle of running your hay farm or your small farm. And that is debt, depreciation, or both, and how they can affect your farming operation in a positive or negative way. Now, I'm no IRS agent, I'm no accountant, but I don't really offer like for real deal financial advice. All I can do is tell you my experience. And if you watched any of our videos, a lot of times people in the comments, they'll ask how many acres you got, how much do you is the price of how much do you charge for a bale of hay, things like that. And we're pretty close to the vest with our financial information, but we'll tell you this. This farm, all of it, every square inch of it, is debt-free. There's no debt on this farm. And we have a little bit of depreciation that should go away to pretty much zero in 2023. So, one of the things that comes to mind if you're a haymaker, and everybody that sells hay experiences this, but you'll have a price. I apologize for the glare. You'll have a price on a square bale of hay, and they'll say it ain't worth it. It's not worth it. And, it's considerable expense buying equipment, tractors, and barns and land. It's all very, very expensive. And, some customer comes along and just willy-nilly says it's not worth it. Those kind of comments are uninformed, and they're unhelpful. But with regard to debt on the farm, and I'll just kind of try to get into the nuts and bolts here. I'm kind of winging it. I don't have notes, and I really never have notes on these videos. I just kind of wing what I'm talking about. But you have to have working capital on your farm. You got to be able to have enough headroom with the money that comes in and the money that goes out. There needs to be enough left over that you can buy your consumables, your fertilizer, your twine, everything that you need to carry on a farming operation. You need to be generating enough revenue to cover those expenses. And it's one thing to buy a tractor or a hay cutter. There's a difference between a capital investment long term and year over year expenses. So you presumably you're farming for profit. It's not a hobby. And it makes no sense to me to go to all the trouble making a square bale of hay and then sending money out of your savings with it when you sell it to the customer for the price they want, because your price isn't worth it. And so having that headroom or profit, if you will, above your normal expenses like fertilizer and lime is important. And so you want to be able to cover all of these things. So if you take on too many loans for this and that and something else and all this thing, you know, the next thing you know, you're swimming in debt and you don't have any money to improve the farm and to carry on from year to year. You're just smothered in debt. So depreciation can be just as choking as debt. And you know, the IRS has certain rules. This tractor is the hardest thing to get on with that loader frame having you in, but you know, depreciation can cause problems too, because the nice thing about depreciation is you can use 100% of your dollar to purchase things with, and if you don't have that, then, you know, assuming you're a profitable farm, you're going to be paying income tax on your profit, and also what people refer to as self-employment tax. In other words, you're paying the employer's part of Social Security in addition to your own, and it can be somewhat onerous if you look at the numbers. But the problem is you can show a loss on your Schedule F form, and you know, I'm not going to get into a debate about how many years you can lose money, but you run that by your accountant. I don't even want to know in the comments. I have a pretty good idea, but one of the big things is, you know, you have to show intent. The intent is to make a profit, you know, at some point, even if it's an occasional profit. And we might get into that in another video, but what happens is you buy a pile of equipment, and then you have to write it off, maybe let's say over 7 years, and you've got so much depreciation that your gross revenue has a hard time catching up with it. And so you may find yourself locking yourself into a loss on your tax form every year because you chose to have so much depreciation. And you know, common sense tells you that it's one thing in a startup business to have exuberant expenses and losses, but once you get going, you know, obviously the goal is to show a profit. And in our case, we're not interested in break even. We want to have profit for income. We want income off this farm for our personal lives. We don't want to spend every dime we got, you know, pouring it right back in the farm. There's a time and place for that, but you know, at some point, presumably for all the work that you go through to do whatever it is you're doing on your farm, in our case it's hay, that when you get to the other side, there's going to be some profit that you can use for ordinary income. Well, what happens is you have so much depreciation, and it wipes out the margin on your gross profits, or on your gross revenue, that you decide to spend extra money on fertilizer, or maybe you see a deal on a piece of equipment. And some people, they have so much depreciation, they have no wiggle room at all. And so if they buy something that's even somewhat insignificant in cost, it puts them into a loss. So you got plenty of money, you know, you got plenty of money to buy stuff with. The problem is when you go to write it off, then it becomes a problem, because now your depreciation, your write-offs are more than your gross income, and you're showing a loss on your Schedule F. So you want to be careful with your depreciation, not to have so much that it eats into your potential working capital. And on our farm, and again, I'm going to share a little more info, there's a deduction called 179, and we try to use 179 deduction because you can write equipment off it, all of it, in 1 year. And so our situation is a little different. You know, I'm kind of a one-man show. I got family that helps, but you know, anything could happen. And you know, I like to be in a position where if something happens to me, maybe I have a bad year health-wise, or a couple of bad years health-wise, that I'm not staring 7 years of high depreciation in the face, and I'll never, let's say in that 7 years, I may never have enough income, gross income coming in on the sale of my hay, that I could ever show a profit. And from a business standpoint, it seems to me that suffering staggering losses year over year for long term makes no sense. So in our case, if something happens to me, we want to be able to turn a little bit of revenue, God forbid something were to happen, and you know, be able to show a profit. If you're making money, Big Brother may or may not come to see you, I guess is the point. And then obviously we want to make enough money here to meet the threshold that from a zoning standpoint, the county says, yeah, you're, without a doubt, you're agriculture. And so we try to write it off. And if I need some kind of tax loophole to use to minimize you know, minimize taxes, I prefer to have an IRA, just an, you know, some kind of IRA. And because you know, you don't have to spend a pile of money. The probability is your taxes are far less than a new piece of equipment would ever cost. So you know, we try to keep our deduction on this farm, our depreciation on this farm, to a minimum, so that if something comes along and trips us up, we're not showing sustained losses. So I had a professor in college. He taught economics, engineering economics, and he was a pretty sage old guy, and he'd lived a lot in his lifetime. He'd been bankrupt with businesses 3 times, and he understood. I mean, the reason he was teaching is because he needed insurance and some semblance of a pension. He'd lost everything else. So who knows, if he'd went in business a 4th time, he might have lost his shirt. But for the rest of us, he could tell us firsthand, you know, where the hazards were as far as personal finance and business. And one of the things I remember clearly about that class is he said that, you know, if you're a business, you assume you'll live forever. You assume the business will live forever. And so you basically leverage it or borrow money to expand the business to the max, because you have forever to pay it off. And maybe that's the way it works in business, but you know, with a small farm like we got, I'm not in business forever. And he said on a personal side, you don't look at finances the same way as a business because of that. You know, when you hit retirement, you know, you need to be debt free to the extent possible, because you know, the money train is going to stop. Unlike a business, which may go on for 100 years, you know, at some point, that's not going to be the case with you. You can't do as much, and you have to retire. So, I said all that to say this, that even though sometimes you have to borrow money to farm, sometimes you may or may not be able to be a cash buyer, and people are passionate about that. I'm not going to debate it. Every person's situation is different, in a broad brush. It does not necessarily cover every surface that it comes across. So, let everybody else hash out whether or not you should have a debt or not have debt. What I'm saying is, if you're an individual farming like I am, you need to plan for the day that everything's got to be paid for, or with respect to depreciation, you need to plan such that you can, you're not choking on your depreciation or your debt, and you have working capital and hopefully a profit margin to go with it, so that your time is worth the effort. Otherwise, you're just kind of a break even. I mean, nothing wrong with farming and breaking even. That's fine. But if you're just perpetually losing money, it's probably, especially on a small scale, probably going to be viewed upon as a hobby. That's to kind of boil things down again. Debt and depreciation are useful tools if they're managed right, but you just want to be real careful about choking on debt financially and choking on depreciation, because both of them can limit your working capital such that your farm will go into decline, and then you got to spend even more money. I'll have more on small farm finance videos coming up. I've got some topics I want to cover, but I hope this has been helpful. And just one other thing I would encourage when you're busy doing your tax forms, get a good accountant, and don't assume. Rely on somebody that knows what they're doing, and you can avoid a lot of trouble. You can save a lot of money if you got a good farm accountant. So again, the debt and depreciation, try not to choke on either one. Have some working capital for your year-over-year expenses, repairs, and then a certain chunk over and above that as income in your profitable small hay farm, or your profitable small whatever farm. So, all right, well, we're going to call it a day here on the farm, and hope you enjoyed the video. Comment, like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you later.